So, which uniforms should you invest in? Next month, we'll have the Black Friday sales, where we'll basically get half off of all uniforms, which is the biggest discount of the year versus the 40% off when they are discounted. So 50% is a pretty big discount. So this has got a lot of people, of course, thinking, well, which uniform should I buy? Which uniform should I save up for? And which uniform should I plan for? So what I figured I'd do is put together a list of all uniforms, including seasonal uniforms and paywall uniforms, as well as ones that will be discounted with the 50% off. Just give my opinion which ones I think are most important in the game and where I think they're good. This is an opinion-based video. Opinions will vary, so use this loosely, but this is just my 2 cents in the way I'm thinking. I do own every uniform in the game besides for 2, because I'm waiting on the free 10 tokens to get Sin's uniform, and there is a Captain Marvel's uniform that is locked and is unobtainable, unfortunately. So yeah, so when I'm talking about which uniforms to buy, I'm doing this based upon things that I've actually seen and played with myself, as well as seen other people play with on their accounts. Okay, so let's talk about some uniforms. I'm just going to go through each of the characters, and I'm going to jump to the ones that I think are worth investing in, and I'll tell you why. Doctor Strange's Death of Doctor Strange, I think, is worth an investment for a few reasons. First of all, if you tier 4 him, he's actually really good. He's not top meta, but he is in pretty meta. He's just below meta, right? So even on the Blast Mail Day, Magneto outscores him, but he gets really close second. And Magneto actually has a seasonal uniform, so maybe you don't have it or can't afford it or haven't gotten it. He's very useful. He's useful as a lead, but he's mostly useful for the damage he does. So even though he can do AB, he's not top AB. He can do World Boss Legendary. He can do GBR. So he's a PvE character, but he is a pretty strong character with this uniform. All right, next, Magneto. Magneto's Krakoan Winter uniform is a seasonal uniform, but he is basically the king of AB, so ABX, ABL. And he can also be used in GBR and World Boss Legendary, even though he's a little bit squishy in the World Boss Legendary. But 100% worth getting this uniform if you can, but with it being seasonal, you probably will not be able to pick it up on Black Friday. Next one would be Adam Warlock if you like PvP. So this is a PvP uniform, but Marvel Studios Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is worth picking up right now. I consider him to be one of the top 3, maybe even the top 1 of the meta PvP characters in the game, and I actually do not put a CTP that is specific for PvP on him. I actually put an energy, and he does really good with this energy on his PvP attacks because it allows him to just explode. Next one is Odin. Odin's a little bit on the iffy side because he is being outscored by Ghost Rider's newest uniform. Even at a lower level, at a tier 3, he's outscoring a tier 4, but it is still a really solid uniform, and it's probably one of the best, the best universal male characters in the game. He ranks up there right below Ghost Rider, in my opinion. But Avengers, 1 million BC, this uniform here is a nice solid pick, nice solid boost. He's basically going to be PvE, of course, focused like many of the other ones. So we're talking World Boss Legendary, GBR, and Alliance Battle Extreme and Alliance Battle Legendary, so ABX and ABL. There, of course, like I said, there are those that can outscore him, so it's kind of not necessarily needed, but it is a nice solid uniform and something worth considering. He is expensive, though. Next one is Jean Grey Dark Phoenix. So Jean Grey is one of the most expensive characters in the game, but this is easily one of the most powerful uniforms in the game. She's pretty much good everywhere. You give her a PvP build, she's one of the top 3 meta in PvP. You give her a PvE build, and she is meta in every single game mode. World Boss Legendary, GBR, ABX, ABL. She just knocks it out of the park for the days that she can do in the AB modes, and she's just a really, really powerful character, easy to use, very spammy. Definitely worth investing in the Dark Phoenix uniform. Storm is a niche. So this is one of those uniforms where it's kind of like it would be nice to have specifically for ABL meta. There is one day only she can do it for ABL for female mutants. Now, for mutants, period, Cable's uniform actually can outscore her uniform, but she can still do 2 days in ABL. She's a glass cannon. She's good in PvE. You can use her in all the PvE modes. It is a seasonal uniform for the Krakoan summer, so it's kind of one of those, So if you're trying to budget and stuff, maybe you'll skip out on this uniform, but if you're trying to do a top AB player, it's worth getting. Dr. Octopus, Ends of Earth, AB. Alliance Battle Extreme, Alliance Battle Legendary. This uniform is meta. Definitely worth picking up. Pretty easy to use rotation. I think, because you're pretty much, in a way, a spam. He kind of struggles in some of the air game modes. World Boss Legendary kind of struggles with. GBR he's not so good in, so he's pretty much AB only, but it is worth investing in that. Moon Knight. This one's controversial because there are other combat characters which are subjectively almost as good as. In my opinion, though, even though this is an old uniform and pretty outdated, Marvel Studios' Moon Knight I still think is a solid pick due to the survivability and healing, and the fact that he does have AB days. He does do good in World Boss Legendary, but not super high from what I've observed personally. And he does okay in GBR. So this is kind of one of those, if you really need it. Luna Snow. Seasonal uniform, Summer Lilac. She is the unofficial queen of AB. Easily up there with Magneto. So her and Magneto seems to score the most on days that they can be used. She's really good in World Boss Legendary. She's also good in GBR. This is a very, very powerful uniform. Again, seasonal, but definitely worth investing in. Spider-Man Back to Basics. This is a PvP uniform. So in PvP, he is incredibly good, and if you can tier 4 him, he just does a great job. Maybe top 5 or at least top 10 PvP characters in the game. So this, if you like PvP. Next one on the list, Black Bolt. Black Bolt's kind of on the iffy side. It is seasonal. As of the making of this video, it's on sale right now. Fallen Soul. Fallen Soul is a very, very, very powerful uniform. It is AB meta. I think Ghost Rider can do at least the hero days. He is a villain, so it gives you villain options. And this uniform is probably, it's Ghost Rider and Black Bolt are going to be the meta for universal characters in AB. He can pretty much do any game mode. World Boss Legendary, GBR. He can solo carry stuff. He's super, super strong. So I still think this is worth picking up right now. Next on the list is Thor. So Marvel Studios Thor Love and Thunder is a good uniform. At this point, he's dropped off. Odin outscores him in AB, so he's not really AB meta anymore. In World Boss Legendary or Farming and GBR, he still does solid, and he's a really, really good striker. So it's one of those nice-to-have uniforms. Not necessarily a must-have, but it is a nice-to-have uniform because he is still a good character. Thanos, Wise Harvester. Right now it's AB meta. However, there are rumors that in the next season of Loki, the TV series, he's going to get a new uniform, so he might be able to outdo this. This is a PvE uniform. He's no longer PvP with this particular uniform. If you did pick it up, he's very expensive, but at the moment, he is ABL meta for the Villain Universal Alien Stuff Day, so he does a really good job. He's solid in PvE content. He can do World Boss Legendaries. Yeah, so for PvE, at the moment, he's still worth getting, but the uniform potentially could fall off in the next year or next couple of months. I mean, in a year's time, a lot of things can get replaced, but I think this will eventually fall off. He's also pretty expensive. Cable. Cable, Heart of Darkness, is ABL meta for one specific day. Storm can also do that day. He does pretty good in a lot of PvE content, but he's not necessarily super needed. That's why I only have him at a tier 3. This is one of those nice-to-have uniforms. It's a nice power buff for the character, and if you like the character, it's worth investing in because he can go up to tier 4, and he, of course, is proc-friendly technically, so you could pull off an energy with him. I still think he does better with a rage personally, but it's worth considering. So yeah, Heart of Darkness for Cable. Next uniform, Wolverine. Again, a PvP uniform here. It is X Deaths of Wolverine. If you're going PvP wise, this probably is in the top 5 PvP uniforms in my opinion. If you don't like PvP, don't get it. Let's see. Next uniform. Yeah, I'm actually skipping Namor and Hulk. There's reasons for that. Sharon Rogers. So Sharon Rogers, Poseidon armor, is World Boss Legendary meta. She just fires off a tier 3 and just eats World Boss Legendaries alive. She is proc friendly, of course, too. So you can use a energy on her, which is probably her best CTP. So she's a really solid character for World Boss Legendary. Next uniform that I would recommend would be Miles Morales' Across the Spider-Verse. So Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, for the same reason, World Boss Legendary meta. He is proc friendly, even though I think he's better with the Judgment, but he just eats World Boss Legendaries alive like Captain America Sharon Rogers does. Ghost Rider, he's the big hotness right now. It is a seasonal uniform. Raged Return, I think right now this is like the top meta for AB. He's a great striker. He's probably the best striker in ABX and ABL both days, regardless of the character you're using, unless you need the striker to cancel. And by himself, actually using him for the damage, he is AB meta for sure. He just is scoring astronomically any PvE mode, World Boss Legendary, GBR. He's just super powerful with this uniform. If you can pick it up, go ahead and get it. Very, very impressive. And he also has the added bonus of the Team Up Collection and can be tiered 4. He's just incredibly insane with the damage. It's unreal. Next uniform, I'm gonna have to go through a few. Proxima Midnight for her support / leadership. With her uniform, you'd have to go to her uniform options, but she has some pretty solid stuff here for supervillains if you get that uniform for a support / lead. Scarlet Witch, even though eventually she'll get a new one, we're talking Marvel Studios Doctor Strange 2 Scarlet Witch is AB meta, and she's useful in a lot of different game modes. Very spammy uniform with a Rage, or technically you could use a Judgment with her. But she can do World Boss Legendary GBR. Really solid uniform, very powerful. Next one would be Strife, PvP support character, because of some of the abilities he gets on his classic uniform here. So classic for Strife. Where's the passive over here? Maybe it's just his leadership, actually. I think it is just his leadership. Increase basic defenses. Now I guess it's under his uniform skills. Where's it at? I'm trying to find the effect. There it is. So all allies gets that remove debuff. Remove debuff is very important for PvP, as you know. So he has a lead / remove debuff, so he doesn't have to be in the leadership role. So you could have the buff from a leadership that enhances your character's attack damage, and then just have him on the team to just give that removes debuffs. Debuffs are things that like web up or slow down or time freeze characters, so it shuts down some of the status effects, and they can ruin your match in PvP. So for supporting purposes, Strife is good, and Strife is pretty powerful, so both having the support and the ability to do pretty decent is worth having that uniform as well. Cyclops is a support lead with 2 different uniforms. His Phoenix 5 makes him a villain, and his Modern makes him a hero. So his Modern, in my opinion, is a little bit better, but the Phoenix 5 allows him to do a villain, so he can do a lot of different AB days, so lead / support. Next uniform, She-Hulk for AB, because Niche Combat Female Day. She does incredibly well with, unfortunately, Rage, but she is PvE meta-specific for AB. I wouldn't really use her much anywhere else. She does have a good leadership even without the uniform, but Marvel Studios She-Hulk turning at LOL right now for Combat Female AB. Taskmaster, 100% need the Marvel Studios Black Widow uniform. Incredible support because of the damage dealt uniform effect here for all allies. Usable on multiple days for AB. It's a support uniform, but definitely worth picking up. Ancient One, Unleashed Mystic, for a couple of reasons here. So first of all, she's PvP budget good. Oh, I can't say meta, but budget good. She also has like a lead / support, so increased damage to elemental types. And then, of course, her leadership is for blast types only, but 50% energy increase. So she's kind of a lead support PvP character. Not need to have uniform, but definitely worth considering. Enchantress, War of the Realms, uniform effect over here, support. So it's a support uniform, but supervillains specifically get extra attack and damage dealt. So for those purposes, support character Enchantress. Shuri. Shuri is a lead / support, even though she does do good in her own right, but Marvel Studios Black Panther Wakanda Forever. The uniform here doesn't have anything for the uniform effect. It's specific for the skills, both the leadership skills and the passive skill. So her leadership here gives increase 35. Her passive, all allies, gets the 55 damage dealt, which is the main reason you want it. So, yeah, Shuri. Green Goblin, Red Goblin uniform for AB. He's AB meta. There's a certain day only he can do. And, yeah, it's just basically AB meta for the Red Goblin uniform for Green Goblin. Next, Sin, even though I know it's a paywall and stuff, and it's also seasonal. Her newest uniform, like I said, I'm waiting on the free 10 tokens. I have 20. I'm just waiting for the next 10. But she basically is going to get this new passive on her skill, which is right here. Supervillains are going to get 55% damage dealt to boss types. So I think that'll be a nice-to-have uniform. Obviously, not everybody wants to spend actual cash. But, yeah, it's something worth considering. White Fox is a nice-to-have, the Lifestyle Series 2. She's fine without it, but with the Lifestyle Series 2, there's some uniform boost for superheroes that I think will be nice to have for different AB modes. So as a support uniform, White Fox Lifestyle Series 2. Wong has a niche support ability with his uniform that works for magic allies. That's not the right one. Magic allies, so 53% damage dealt. I think it's a nice little boost. Nice for Doctor Strange or any of the other magic type characters. It's a nice to have uniform, not a need. Loki at the moment, until he gets a new uniform, Marvel Studios Loki TVA suit is solid. It is no longer meta in AB because Wise Harvester Thanos outscores him now, but he's still a good farming character and he's still usable in World Boss Legendary. He's a very usable character for Tier 3 and does score pretty strong. I think we're going to get a new uniform soon, so I don't know if I would necessarily jump on this uniform anymore. I think it's dated enough to wait, but it's still a solid uniform. Morgan Le Fay for support, Fallen Soul. And I think Fallen Soul might be a seasonal uniform. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the uniform affects your universal types, get extra damage and 35% damage dealt, and does the remove all debuffs, which is nice for PvP as well. So support for PvP or PvE. It's a support uniform, but it's definitely worth investing in my opinion. Who else? I think we're towards the end of my list. I mean, Domino, I hear some good things about PvP, but I have not been able to use her with much success. Civ. Civ's Asgard invasion here. She does a few things, and it's support leadership is why you would get this uniform. So all allies get increased speed, but also increased damage dealt to boss types by 45%. This is just by being on the team. She also has a fairly solid leadership, in my opinion. Not great, but solid. Increased hit points, helps characters like Hulk, if you're using Hulk. Who increase their damage based upon hit points. That's specific to Hulk, but also just having a bigger hit point pool to survive more, and then 35% increase physical attack. Her leadership is not the main reason. It's mostly that support passive. Titania, Fear itself. This is good for combat female day. She can do a swap, and she has a decent leadership. So this is a nice to have uniform, but for AB, because of the swap canceling and even the swap play, it's worth investing in this for AB. Valkyrie is a nice little bump to her lead support. Marvel Studios Thor Love and Thunder. It's mostly for her passive, and like I said, you don't need her uniform necessarily. She still has a passive, it's just better with the uniform, so it's a nice to have. But 55% damage dealt, of course, and then for a while there, she was actually doing really good in AB. You no longer use her for AB, but I mean, technically you can do like a whole swap gameplay with her if you wanted to, but it's mostly for that passive. Mysterio, this is a seasonal uniform, but Summer Mystery Mysterio has a uniform passive here for, again, damage dealt, supervillains. So extra attack and 40% damage dealt. So that's the reason for that uniform. And let me see, who else do we have? Let's see. Oh, here's a couple more. So Waves is a nice to have with the classic. She kind of is not as important as some other characters, like Shuri kind of replaces her, but she has a weaker version for increased basic attack by 25 instead of 35, and then she has a passive for the damage dealt, but it's 50 instead of 55. So again, Shuri's like a better version of her, but with the uniform, she gets a little bit of a bump to her skills. So that's a nice to have, but not a needed. Angela, with her Asgard's Assassin, she has a uniform passive here, which applies to superhero allies, and it gives the 40% damage dealt. So as a support uniform, Angela's, I think, is worth picking up. Robbie Reyes, for the new Ghost Rider uniform, especially when you tier 4 him, he has some pretty cool uniform effects here. Obviously, it's worth having as artifact too, but on the skills specifically, not that passive, it's the other passive. Flame allies increase fire resistance. There is an artifact that he has that will increase fire damage based upon fire resistance. So he gives the fire resistance plus his artifact. Kind of a nice little combo, especially for individuals like Ghost Rider, who has leadership, which is also fire resist. So it just stacks on the fire resist, and the artifact gives extra damage for it. But he also increases fire damage by 30% anyway, and it has an 80% chance to become immune to fire damage. So this is for all flame allies. So for that reason, I think he's worth investing in under niche conditions. So you don't necessarily need to have him, but if you're going to build Ghost Rider and you're going to tier 4 him, I would probably get Robbie Reyes' uniform, especially if you have the artifact. Let's see. I don't know if there is anyone else now. I think that's the last one. Nope, there is one more for sure. I know Black Cat. I must have passed her up. Did I pass Black Cat? I must have passed Black Cat. Yeah, I think Black Cat is the last uniform I personally would recommend investing in. Yeah. I don't know how I passed her. And it is a seasonal uniform, and it is kind of niche. Oh, yeah, she's a tier 3, so she should be up here in this section. It's very bizarre. She's got that big hat. She's usually hard to miss. Is she transcended and not tier 3? So weird. Oh, she's right here. She's tier 2. Never mind. That's one of the problems. So, seasonal uniform, winter criminal. The main reason that you get it is for leadership, for the most part. It's the so the uniform effect does nothing but the change skills here. So all allies gets this increase all debuffs, which is useful, right? So increased debuffs is when you do defense down or webbing or things and you're doing it against boss types. It's useful in that capacity. But she's got this pretty awesome leadership too. That's actually all kind of cool. Decrease all debuff effects, but leadership here, increase all basic attacks by 65% for supervillains specifically, and ignore target's dodge rate. So useful in farming different types of modes, but also that nice little boost for attack. And there was a swap thing you would do. You would pop your 5 to get the defenses decreased, and I think it was like one of this here. Increase all debuff effects. Maybe that applies when you did the 5. I knew we used to swap to her to do that 5 in AB to help remove the shields and kind of like auto attack with a character. That's not used as much anymore, so I don't know if she's necessarily needed at this point. It's a nice to have uniform, but it's still a good boost. So that's the last one I wanted to mention. Sorry, I had to hunt it down. So here you go. Those are the uniforms that I think are worth having. Those are the uniforms that I think are usable right now. I mean, there are some honorable mentions like Hulk for PvP and Namor for PvE, but because there's other characters that outshine both of those characters, I don't think they're necessarily worth mentioning on my particular list other than honorable mentions. So, and there's other uniforms that are so-so, but those are the ones I personally would invest in and consider getting if you don't have. Hopefully that's useful. As always, thank you for watching, and best of luck in Marvel Future Fight.